Today we're here with Vanessa Alzate. She's going to talk about exploring and developing engaging your learners. She is the president and CEO of Anchor Training. She received her BA in both communications and political science from Rutgers University and an MS in corporate organizational communication from Northeastern University. So over a decade, she's consulted with many mid to large organizations and industries ranging from pharmaceutical sales to fashion, and developed training strategies tailored to each individual organization and team. Vanessa is a dynamic educator in the classroom and works to bring that classroom experience to life online via webinar training and e-learning. So throughout her career, Vanessa has excelled in assisting companies and individuals to expand their industry knowledge through creative e-learning classroom curriculum, while continuing to add consistently to her own education and training. Her experiences included positions within Stay in Front, eGalaxy Solutions, and many others, before starting her firm in 2018. Vanessa is committed to helping everyone become the best version of themselves, and she is a strong advocate for empowering women and minorities and communities. So we're so glad to have her as a part of our chapter, the New Jersey chapter, and a member, and engaged in sharing today. So go ahead, Vanessa, take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Alzate, like Juliet so kindly introduced. So I'm going to be talking today about engaging your learners and some of the tools that I've been utilizing that are pretty low cost, easy to use, and just some different ways to think about learning and some different ways to think about engagement. So first things first, just a little additional introduction. I've been making learning fun since 2009. Like Juliet stated, I graduated from Rutgers here in New Brunswick, and then I went and got my master's at Northeastern. And then I always do fun facts, no matter where I am, what I do. It's my favorite thing to do. So my fun fact for you all is that I am a true Jersey Shore girl. I love a good pork roll, egg, and cheese while I'm hanging out on the shore. So if you want to just pop into the chat where you all are from, are you from here? Are you from one of our partner chapters? Would love to learn more about where everyone is. Pennington, New Jersey, Buffalo, New York. Awesome. We're Patriots fans, so not a huge Buffalo Bills fans, but Brooklyn, now living in Hillsborough. I almost moved to Hillsborough. I loved it. Just outside of Philly, one of my favorite cities. Montclair. Get on the bus. I'm sorry, Emily, but I can't. I cannot. Madison, New Jersey, and Hamilton. Awesome. It's so great to see everybody. I am in North Brunswick, New Jersey, so did not move very far after I graduated from Rutgers, New Brunswick, and it's lovely to be 10 minutes away from my alma mater, and now my husband works there, so it's even more fun to go back to games and stuff. So first things first, when we're talking about engaging learners, and I think this is the part that typically gets missed or overlooked, and I think it's for a few different reasons. So the first thing, are you thinking about what's best for the content? And I'd love to take a moment to ask you all, if you could put it in the chat, how many of you are taking the time to do a needs analysis or really think about what's the best solution for the for your learning? Or are you being told we need e-learning, or we need an VILT or an ILT? You can just pop that into the chat. As I sip my coffee on Free Coffee Day. Sandy says he does needs assessments with clients and SMEs. Pete says he encourages clients to do some analysis first. Awesome. I'm glad that you guys are making time to do this needs analysis. Peter mentioned that he does front-end analysis on all projects. I love to hear that you guys are doing some of that. I think what I am seeing with a lot of clients is they're in a rush to get to that phase of development and the phase of deployment, and they don't take the time to do a front-end analysis or a just really thinking about the content and the learner. And it's such a huge disservice 2-hour learners, and it's the first step to get to that snooze fest type of e-learning or learning, because you're not truly thinking about, you know, the learner and what the training content actually needs. So quickly, we'll talk a little bit about getting back to the basics for those of you that may not do a ton of needs analysis. Some things that you want to think about are, who are your learners, right? Are they sales staff? Are they, you know, more home office type staff? Who is it that you're trying to target? And what I like to do is create a learner persona, and I actually use the tool Canva to do that, which I'll show you a little bit later. It's a really great tool that allows me to kind of map and in an infographic, showcase who the learner is and create a story about that person. I also just very recently used the tool Miro board, M-I-R-O, to do something like this. And what my team and I did is we all went into our Miro board and put in our kind of learner persona and answered some questions about what motivates our learner, what are some key characteristics about our learner, things like that. And we were able to compile all of that together. And then I took that and put it into Canva and created a profile for us to really think about as we go through the learner experience. And I could actually show you that, that profile. Second thing, what is the business problem that you are trying to solve? So important to always ensure that you're considering the business problem and, you know, and try to actually come up with a solution. I always love to ask if there's any existing materials in use on the topic. Sometimes when I am provided by a client with what they feel that they need for training or what they think they need a revamp on, sometimes I ask why. And to take a look at some of that existing material. A lot of times what I'm noticing is that the right tool is not being used for that material. Or students might need a refresher, or they just need a place to go when they need to brush up on that topic. And then the other thing I love to ask is, what tasks do the learners need to complete? And that's crucial. I think that we treat adult learners like adult learners, and just giving them the information of what's in it for them, what do they have to know out of this training, and get rid of all the extraneous information. One of the key ways for engaging learning is chunking up your content. So keep the content digestible and bite-sized. Our attention span is getting shorter, probably by the second. So it's really important to keep that content digestible and short. Does it mean that you want to do a 2-minute video on something that deserves more time? But you don't want to create a 20-minute video on something that really only needs 5 minutes to be talked about. You don't need to get into all of the bells and whistles of everything that the tool needs to do. I've gotten storyboards passed over to me about software training where they're talking about, you know, advanced searching. Well, when I talk to the learners, none of them do that advanced learning or advanced searching. So it's just a tool or an option that they don't need to know about. And there is a help portal if they really wanted to learn about it that they could go to. So it's really not a good use of the learner's time, and it really dissatisfies them when they're going through their learning content. So keep your content digestible. Chunking up your content, again, makes you think critically about what the learner actually needs to know. And you almost become, you know, pretty brutal when you're cutting out content and really trying to keep things to a certain amount of time. It really makes you get down to like the nuts and the bolts. And chunking up content has certainly allowed the ability in whatever system that you're using to deploy your learning to develop learning paths that students can then complete at their own pace. And the really cool thing that I did recently with a client was we actually extrapolated their assessments into separate modules. So they would take a training, and then they would take a quick bite-sized module, and then there would be an assessment after the fact. And the nice thing about that is that we were able to create a learning path, but that assessment we could then use, you know, a year later to assign back to the learners without taking the prerequisite instructional video, and see where our students were missing the mark, where they were good and they didn't need any additional training, and it helped inform us about where we maybe needed to have additional training, or create or look at our training and refresh that, and maybe make a little bit more sense or spend a little bit more time in something. So that was a really cool thing that we did with the ability that we had through chunking up our learning. So keeping it interactive, I think this is one of the keys to engaging learning, and reminding ourselves that interaction is not the next button. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen training that, you know, my clients have put out there. It's usually compliance training, which can be fun and engaging, FYI. And it's just a matter of clicking the next button. And I actually had this experience when I received one of my clients' laptops, and in order to be considered a consultant for them, I had to go through like 8 hours of compliance training. I was working on like one 15-minute e-learn, so it felt like a lot for that one 15-minute e-learn, but I remember opening up that compliance training and just like clicking next, or just waiting till the seek bar ran out so I could click next. I mean, I know I didn't need to really truly retain the information, but I could only imagine as I was going through that training that is what most learners were trying to do, and just trying to get the knowledge check questions correct. So remembering that just because you add an X button doesn't mean the learner is actually digesting any of the information. The interaction, so with that, interaction needs to be meaningful and purposeful. So a lot of the software training that I do, we actually put our learners into the system and we ask them to perform tasks. And it is with parameters, like if you think of bumpers at the bowling lane, which I still try to use to this day. But it's the ability to create a sandbox for your learners to mess around with, so that they can complete the task, know how to do them. So when they see their live system, they actually are able to feel comfortable and not as overwhelmed to complete the tasks in real time. The other big thing, and I think it's a personal pet peeve of mine, is linear training and linear learning. Allow your learners to explore. It helps learners retain information, and it just engages them right from the beginning. So some of the things that I've done for this is click to reveal information. So I would give the student or the learner, if it's a software training, a screenshot of the home screen. And then I put information icons all over that allows them to then explore what that area of the home screen does, or what that menu option is for. And it puts them more in control of their learning. Additionally, I recommend, if you can, making the menu something that's clickable and takes the student through a certain path in the learning, so a certain topic. And they don't have to start from point A to point Z as you write it. They can start at point Z, and you can make them go through point A through Z until they, complete the course. But at least that gives the learner the ability to go in and experience the learning that they want to learn first. And usually that's the learning that they need to know for their job. So choosing your own adventure, those types of opportunities are critical to engaging your learner. So here I have a screenshot of one of my samples, and we'll actually pop out of PowerPoint in a little bit and I will show you some of them. But interactive software simulations, they're my bread and butter. Like I was telling Juliet earlier, I'm on the road to 500 e-learns for one client. And I'm probably maybe gonna hit it by the end of the year. That'd be a really cool way to end 2020. But some of the things that we try to do is providing tasks that the students will complete and ask them to complete the task, and giving them minimal guidance, allowing them to fail in order to learn where they're supposed to go to complete that task. You could always give them, a try again hint, or like a hint layer or something like that, but giving them the ability to just go in and try the task, amazing. moving away from demo mode and then a try it mode. I received feedback from a client last year so I was helping them with their third phase of a launch of a new software. And they told me that in their e-learns that they did for phase 1 and phase 2, what the feedback was from their learners was it was very repetitive because they had the demo that walked them through how to complete a task. And then they had the try it mode where they actually had to go and complete that task. What I tend to do is I actually blend the two, where there is a little bit of a demo, so not every step needs to be done by the learner, but more often than not, if you actually weighed out a lot of my e-learning, 75 to 90% of the e-learn the student is doing. So they're really trying it as they go along. And then at the end, they give them a scenario that they'll have to go through on their own as part of the knowledge check. So mixing the two helps to shorten the e-learn and how long they're in it. And it allows them to retain engagement. And it's like a second way of trying the task for themselves. And then support multiple learning preferences through these simulations. So learning styles, we all know is a thing of the past, has been debunked a bunch of times. So I think straying away from that, you have to have a demo for the learners that like to listen or watch, and then you have to have try it for the learners that like to actually go in and practice for themselves. Then you have to have the script for them to read. You don't have to have all of that. You can certainly assist and complement all these learning styles or preferences by using some of these multiple options.
So Vanessa, just wanted to ask if the audience is allowed to ask you questions during the presentation.
Absolutely.
Okay, just wanted to throw it out there.
Thank you. So the next way to engage your learners is the use of scenarios. This allows the learner to use their ability to recall from past experiences and improves retention. So it gives learners a safe space to practice their skills before going into the real world. It increases their critical thinking skills and facilitates behavior change. So a lot of what you'll see that has truly engaged learners is that they're given a scenario, or they're given kind of a setup of their real world, what they would actually be facing. So when you're doing that needs analysis, that's a great time to ask your SME, what are some real life scenarios and what are some real life things that your learners are going to face when they're using this tool or when they're using this skill, and build that into the training. You're not going to build a scenario for every single if this then what, but if you do the most frequent scenarios, they'll know the ones that come up the most and the ones that students need the most help with. And that would be the scenarios that you use to weave through your learning. So I will show you a bit of that when we get into looking at the actual tools. The next is storytelling. So developing a story is one way to get learners to care more deeply about the content. And it has been proven time and time again that a learner, if you're telling them a story, they are going to recall and emotionally connect with that story. A lot of things that we do, a lot of things that we talk about with our friends when we're talking about things that we've learned in the past, we talk about how we learn them from the past through the use of a story. So by applying that principle to your learning, it helps the student or the learner to more closely engage with the content and recall that content. And stories give meaning to data. Putting data on the screen is not going to give you much, but putting a story behind that data and how that data came to be allows the student to actually engage and and learn better. So I am going to open up my, here we go. Can you guys see the Google screen?
Yep, we see.
Yep, okay, good.
Writing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So this is a tool that I use. So this is one of my samples on my website, and the tool that we use is a mix of Articulate Storyline and Beyond. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Beyond. It is an animation tool. It is pretty easy to learn, pick up, and they really make it simple for you to create really engaging videos without really having a lot of video experience. So I know that a lot of people get scared or intimidated by video and the idea of using Adobe to create video, and Beyond has made it a lot simpler to create video, and something that will be usable right out the gate. In addition to Beyond, there is also Powtoons, is something that is also a video editor. And I know one of the sponsors here today is Simple Show, that we actually used as a chapter to create a video about the chapter. And that was, I would say, a pretty easy creation. I would even say easier than Beyond, but it was a good way to include some video into learning. So the really great thing about Beyond is that in this case, I was doing a training about business communication and, you know, not putting the company at risk and things like that. It's a very dry PowerPoint that I received from the client that you could have just read and certified, yes, I read, you know, this SOP, not to, you know, write anything that could get the company in trouble, and to be clear in my communication, and things I need to worry about. But through the use of storytelling and through the use of this animation tool, it was something that looked a little bit different to the learners. It was something that made them actually think about and understand the ramifications of, you know, of not using appropriate, you know, wording and email and things like that, and things that maybe sometimes the students didn't think about, right? So it's a global company, so communication in the US is different than communication with someone in South Africa, and how to be clear through that communication. I'm just gonna pop over to chat really quick. So Joy says, Beyond is a great and fun tool. I agree, and they are just getting better and better. There is now a contemporary theme. This one that we created with is a business casual theme or something like that, and they have a whiteboard theme. We're using it now with another client of mine on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think it's a kind of a different, it looks a little bit different than a lot of the ones that you would see on their showcase, which I can show you their template in a second. And so that client is a little bit more professional and buttoned up, and they want to be looked at as very serious and all of that. So we were able to take some additional like stock video and things like that and make the tool look less cartoon-like and less fun and more professional. So it's definitely a versatile tool, but I have fun with creating different characters. So Joy says she jokes and tells her clients that she can make an avatar of them to use in Beyond, and they just love it. And that's what I do. So in this sample, yeah, so this character that I have here is actually the head of this company's customer service team. So I asked her a picture of her. She was voicing the eLearn. And so I asked her a picture of her, and I based this character off of her. So for my other friend's company that I work with, that I told you up to like almost 500 eLearns for her, I was working on a training for her to onboard her new project managers. And it was their first welcome into, you know, her company. And I asked her, I said, do you want to be the character? And she said, yeah, she didn't want to be the voice, but she wanted me to design the character based off of her. And so we had a lot of fun sitting in Beyond, and you can go down rabbit holes. I mean, you can change the way their eyebrows look, the way their eyes look, you know, their chin, their outfit. It was a process to get her perfect, but she was also sitting right there. So that's a really fun way of engaging your learners. So I definitely recommend using a tool like Beyond to introduce an avatar that will take them through. That's not your traditional stock avatar that everyone sees from Storyline. And if you can create someone that looks like someone at the company, that's a pretty fun way of creating learning. So. And then here, I just wanted to quickly show you in the Beyond template library, just they have so many different options and so many different ways of creating learning that are interesting and get the information that you need across in a fun and engaging way. The really cool thing about Beyond as well is that they offer templates, and that I'm not going to lie and say I'm like the best person in Beyond all the time, but hopefully I remember my password right now. So sorry that you hear me typing. No, see, I know it's gonna happen. Yep. Okay, I'm going to make a new video. So you have the ability when you create videos to start off with a template, either contemporary, which this is like the newest style, business friendly, not business casual, and whiteboard animation. So I'll just select one of them for now. Just to show you that there are templates that you can use. And sometimes I start here, or I'll start in the showcase, in the templates to get my creativity going, because sometimes like this is the hardest part, is thinking about what I want something to look like and how I want it to be, how I want my information presented. So when you click on the bottom to click add scene, you can actually choose from the template, and then you can select. So these are your overarching up here styles. And then if you want to put in a call to action, these are all the different ones they already have that I can then customize to the branding for my customer or my branding. Comparison, charts and data. So I've created some really great things there, talking about data. There's some government stuff there, paragraphs of text, just a lot of really great templates for you to start from, screens if I'm creating something and I'm creating something for you know, a desktop or an iPad and things like that. It just really makes it easy for me to pop in a template scene to start from when I'm creating training. So that is Beyond. Another thing that I used it for was just for explainer videos. So one of the things that for one of my clients we were talking about is how they get internet or how they get Wi-Fi or how they get connected to the Wi-Fi. And it was a really boring process to just read through without some sort of animation. So we just created a very quick, very simple workflow of like, so it starts here through the internet being provided through the WAN, and then kind of the way that it gets connected through. And that's just a quick video. I pop it out as an MP4, threw it into Storyline, and yeah, it was super fun and easy and just an interesting way to provide that information. So Joy mentioned she has a few tutorials to fully understand how to create an animated video. So Joy, if you want to pop in where we could find that, that would be very helpful. Thank you. And so the other thing that I wanted to showcase is just an idea of how to use a scenario and how to use decision making. And this is something that I also used Beyond for. So just click start. So what we did was, this was the second, so we provided a informational module about, you know, what these customer service reps should do with, you know, equipment errors, or when they get a call from, this is for a company that works with restaurants. What to do when you get a call from a restaurant and their like swiper is broken, or their computer is down, their printer is broken. So they went through that informational module, and then we had a subsequent practice module where we had these different avatars just to create something fun and different. I popped that video into Storyline and then gave them the scenario and asked them to pick the option of what they should do in that case. In this case, we were solving the issue of a lot of customer service reps just didn't really know what to do. And these were frequently asked questions that were constantly getting asked. And they were going to their manager and they were going to their higher up on these questions. So we created these trainings where their manager, the woman that I based it off of, she walked them through the process, and then we had them practice and try it and ask them a few scenarios. So those are some ways we used scenarios in those instances. The next thing I wanted to quickly share about is gamifying your content. Gamification, something that can be scary to think about. It's a very big trend we hear a lot about. And so often, you know, even for myself, you see these wonderful things. So like you see Carl Capp's games and things like that, and you almost get intimidated by creating these full simulations, and then you don't do it. And it's really truly one area that can retain knowledge, or can retain, help learners retain information. And it doesn't have to be a super crazy simulation that's created on a specific game software. So you don't need to buy another piece of software in order to create games or have a gaming element. So for example, some ideas here. Use an avatar. So we have, I have some training for clients where they pick their avatar from the beginning, and that's the avatar that walks them through the training. Or they pick, they're able to input their name, and they can, sorry about that, and they can walk through the training. So avatars are a great way to inject a little bit of fun and engagement in games. Develop a simulation. Completion of a task earns the students points. So that's an easy way to just use a variable in something like Articulate or Captivate, where if they answer the question correctly, they get X amount of points. And if they you know, answer the question incorrectly, they then some of the points are subtracted. You can then take that information and funnel it into a portal, into a leaders board. And that is debated whether or not public leaderboards are truly motivating or not. I'm not going to get all into motivational theory. And that's something that every customer of mine does for themselves or thinks about for themselves. What I've seen is that usually the ones at the top are people that are type 3 Enneagrams like me. We love to be at the top and we love to be the leaders. So we want to be on the I want to see where I'm on the leaderboard. I want to see who's beating me, and then I want to beat that person. But that only motivates me. Other people, usually people kind of in the middle or the people at the bottom, it's actually been shown to be demotivating. So I don't know if I would always go down the path of putting in a leaderboard. That's a very company to company decision, but that is a way to motivate some employees. Maybe in a sales type role, that would be very motivating. Trivia. So that's another way to involve your learners in a fun way in the training. And then badges and certificates. The ability to just gain a badge or certificate that you're then, you know, you could put into their profile, into your intranet and things like that, does motivate learners, and it is a way to gamify your content in a very low cost and easy way. Drip feeding content. So this might be something that you may be familiar with, you may not be familiar with, but simply put, drip feeding content is just scheduling when content will go out to an intended audience. So rather than providing, you know, if you're rolling out a new software, rather than providing all of the information they're going to need up front, maybe just starting them off with the basics of what they have to know in order to launch. And then, you know, on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, whatever schedule works for you, just start drip feeding that content out to your learners. That way they're not overwhelmed and overworked and they forget. You could also schedule drip feeding content based on when they're going to need to complete that task. So if it's a task that they only need to complete once a year, maybe you're sending out that training or that learning, whatever that learning looks like for that task, right around the time that they need to complete the task. That way it's immediately available for when they need to actually do it. And you have a better sense of engagement and completion when you're sending it out right before it should be done. Combine storytelling and gamification. So if you're able, like I mentioned earlier, to take that avatar and combine creating a scenario, creating a person, and walking through that game with them, definitely another way to engage your learners. A lot of what I talked about today is within an LMS or within a tool, and through something like e-learning or something like that. I wanted to quickly mention the ability of taking your learning out of the LMS. And like I mentioned, I think in the beginning of our session, when I ask for existing training, part of the reason is because if you're asking me to recreate that training, it didn't work the first time. So why didn't it work the first time? And like I said, a lot of times they're picking to do a training module or an e-learning, and that's not what the student needs. And so you have a few of other options that I think that that companies need to look at when they're looking at their learning and looking at learner engagement. So some of those options, so one of the things you need to worry about is, where are your learners? I said learners. Where are they hanging out? One of the clients I have, their learners are not in their LMS every single day. And when we talk about in the moment, when they're working on a task, they're not going back to the LMS to scrub through that e-learn to figure out how to, complete that task. They are within their CRM tool. And so there was a library, a media library that they have within their CRM where they could upload videos. This is for the clients I was working for are all pharmaceutical companies. So this is where they have their media that they're going to launch when they're in front of the doctor, but they also have a training library in there where they could launch training. So what we did was we created videos for their, most frequently asked questions. So we got together with the help desk and asked them, what are your reps calling you about for when they're in the moment with the doctor? And they gave us a list of their, top 5, top 10 items. And those were what we concentrated on for these quick videos that could then be in this training library. They were no longer than 5 minutes, really down to 2. And it was just a how-to of how to, complete that task. So when they're trying to figure it out in front of the doctor, they're not picking up the phone and calling their help desk. They're just going into their training library. And that's something that doesn't have to be super fancy and super, high production value, right? I think that so often we are all perfectionists of our work, but with the YouTube generation, we have become way more forgiving of what videos look like, and the quality of them doesn't mean that the quality should be poor, but if it's just a quick point and click of how to complete a task, that's totally fine. And actually, if you are creating video, what research has shown is that learners actually will turn off video because of bad audio versus bad video. So if you're going to focus on one of the two, audio would be where I focused. So develop some infographics. So like I mentioned earlier, I do infographics on learner personas. I also do infographics when I am providing just some quick information. This is for my sorority. I volunteer for them, and we were talking about virtual programming and just some quick tips that we had to engage members. And I know that I could have done a video. I know that I could have done, injected it into their full training, but what I knew was going to grab their attention the fastest, something that they're going to save, something that they will share, is an infographic that I then posted on social media for them, into our Facebook group. And I've just been seeing the reactions, the likes, the sharing, the reposting, and it's something that they could then take and they can share. They could save it on their desktop. They could pop it into a presentation for their board meeting, things like that. So remembering that when you're doing learning, it's not about that in-classroom training or just that training event. What are some supplemental items that you can create that you would still have the learning for? So the same goes with job aids. So job aids, what I'm actually starting to do a lot more now is use Articulate Rise for job aids. And Articulate Rise is a more text-based tools you can input through Articulate 360, the same company that owns Articulate Storyline. It's not your traditional e-learning where the entire course is voiced. It looks more like a web page, but it's responsive. I can put multiple types of content in there, including infographics, including interactive images, including videos or audio clips and things like that. And it's just a way for me to create a job aid that's then searchable, and they're able to go into just this one link and search through. So there's a few different options there. And quickly before we finish up, I did just want to show you Canva. Canva is great for creating content. It makes any non-graphic designer look like a graphic designer because they have so many templates. And it's not just for social media. I think that there is areas for learning that you can put into social media, but you could actually create documents through Canva, which I don't think a lot of people know about. You can create prints and things like that, and you can actually create presentations. So instead of using PowerPoint, you can pop into Canva and you can download it as a PowerPoint, but it's just a way to do something that maybe doesn't look exactly like PowerPoint, and it's free. There is a paid version, a pro version, but the free version gives an exceptional amount of content without ever having to pay. I do have the pro plan, so I do pay for it. So some of these things that you see, you may not have access to, but it is really a wonderful tool and not too terribly expensive, and you can do a lot with it. So earlier I mentioned I created a learner persona with a group I'm working with. So I volunteer with a group called Design by Humanity, and we are creating free training for all different types of learners on social justice issues. And in particular, the training that my team is working on, that I oversee, is working on de-escalation techniques outside of the classroom, but in schools. And so we wanted to start off by creating a persona of a middle school teacher, and who is it that we were talking to. So we created a Miro board where we populated who is the person that we're thinking of, we're talking to. And then I went in and created a resume for her, but it more closely talks about who she is, her education, her ethnicity, her work background. This is all made up things that we just made up. It's a story that we made up. What motivates her? What are her challenges? Why is she taking the course? And her skills. I even found a photo in Canva that I used, and this is Greta. And so when we talk about our storyboard and we talk about the content that we're creating, we said, okay, is Greta going to use this? What are the things that she has challenges with? What is motivating? And this may seem unnecessary to some and just kind of a waste of time, I think, for some people to look at, but it does help with the learning because we're always making sure that we're tying back that learning to what's going to engage the learner. So now we're putting a face and a name to that learner, and I was just able, it really wasn't hard. All of this was, this is all a template. So many templates for you to use. I just picked one and started popping in the information. And you're able to put in your brand elements and things like that. If your company uses, Instagram or social media, you can create those types of posts, those carousel posts. So for my social media, for my business, I do a lot of carousel posts. I find it here, where we'll talk about, these are just in time, very short, quick tips. I'm very big on quick tips, and I just use Canva to create all of them. Just 5 quick tips, the template's all there for me, and I'm able to just get out that content in a way that is digestible for the learner, and they're swiping through and they're engaging that way. And then I can actually see on Instagram the analytics, so I see how many people are saving it, how many people are sharing it, and things like that. So those are a few tools that I've been using that have been very helpful, and they're not too expensive.
Vanessa, it looks like we have a question from Tony. He says, thanks all for all this information. It's all new to me. I picked Camtasia as a way to creating video. Is that a good choice? Any experience with this? I think I can easily add Bond clips, for
Mhm.
example. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Camtasia. Tony, that's a great question and a funny intro into my story. When I first, in 2009, when I first started working in training, I worked for a software company and I hated e-learning. I learned it there and I hated e-learning, and we're using Camtasia. And then we finally got off of Camtasia and into Captivate, and that made more sense to me for what we were trying to do. So then I fell in love with e-learning and I started doing it professionally all the time. Now I'm starting to fall back in love with Camtasia. Maybe I'm like cyclical, I don't know. But I like Camtasia, not necessarily for what I was trying to do it with, you know, creating interactive simulations, but creating videos. So Camtasia is definitely a good tool to use for creating video. It's easy, it's low cost. I think it's like $200 or $300 for the year. Or I think actually, I don't remember if it's for the entire time, you know, for the life, for the perpetual license. I know they keep asking me to upgrade, but it's definitely a good tool to use for sure. Sandy mentioned, in your recent experience, what's a good length of modules or courses to engage and develop effective and memorable learning? These are great learning interventions that promote learning by doing. Thank you, Sandy. Truly depends on the content. I would say most of the training that I'm doing is no longer than 20 minutes. When it's like an e-learning module. When we're in a classroom, I have a Facebook group, a free Facebook group for learning and development professionals, and I asked my group, and I asked them how long they feel engaged in a webinar, and 45 minutes to an hour is the longest they felt like they could sit and engage. I have a client that's doing training right now, webinar for an hour, 90 minutes, but we have to break in between or else we lose our learners. And they actually this morning wanted to remove the break from their content. And I was like, no, I'm sorry. We have to build in that break because our learners need that break at that 45-minute mark. So if it's a virtual session, an hour, 45 minutes is really your sweet spot. If it's a video, you know, 15, 20 minutes is typically the longest that I would do because they're usually not going to retain the stuff in the beginning if it goes too much longer than that. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm going to hang out in case anybody does have any other questions. My contact information is here. And I want to thank you all so much for coming to my presentation. And I do have a YouTube channel that's linked in my LinkedIn. So there are tips there and things like that in case you like my presentation style. We do a lot of talking on that channel as well. It's very nice to virtually meet you all, and thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, Vanessa, for showing your presentation and being here today. It's a lot of fun, a lot of information to figure out, you know, how we play with different avatars and chunk out material so that's more engaging for our learners. So we really appreciate it, everyone joining us today. So after